Hey everybody, it's Ricardo Gorski from Tax.one, where we help individuals and businesses pay as little tax as legally possible. And in this video, we are talking about the top 10 low tax jurisdictions with a high quality of life. And the reason for this video is because whenever I talk to some people, there's always this misconception where people think that you have to choose between low taxes and a good quality of life. But this is actually wrong. There are so many options, countries, jurisdictions like these right here where you are paying relatively low taxes while also enjoying an amazing lifestyle. In fact, I would actually argue that most of these countries here and a few others actually offer an even better lifestyle than the people that leave these comments currently live in. I mean, you can't tell me that the West and Central European countries nowadays are a great place to be in, while there are 40, 50, 60% tax rates, rising crime rates, bad weather, untrustworthy politicians, and so much more. But that's a whole different topic, which I will cover in another video. Definitely make sure to subscribe. Also, a small note, we are not talking about paper residencies such as Paraguay and Vanuatu, where you have to go there or maybe not even go there at all, and they claim you to be their tax resident. Those are things that we do not do at Tax.one. We only work with full relocations where individuals with their business, with their partners, families, kids, whatever it is, relocate to a completely new country and basically start a new life. And so let's start right away with number 10, which is Georgia. And I actually have a very good friend of mine from Germany that relocated to Georgia because he actually applied for the virtual zone status. And because he's into IT, this actually makes him eligible to be a so-called virtual zone person, which then makes him eligible for 0% corporate tax on all his profits that he's generating in his business within his company. He doesn't pay any corporate tax at all. But very important, this only applies to IT/software businesses where they are serving foreign clients. But if you fall into this category, actually Georgia is a very good place to be, because then the only tax that would realistically apply is the dividend tax upon distributing your dividends from your company to your personal bank account, and that lies at 5% flat. So that actually means that as an IT person living in Georgia, your total tax rate is just about 5%. And my friend is regularly showing me pictures from the food there, from the nature there, and the prices there are ridiculously cheap. It's an amazing place to live in if you're on a budget, if you're a startup or just an upcoming entrepreneur in general, because you also have great visa options such as a 3-year IT residency permit since 2025. And this makes Georgia perfect for tech people who like the Caucasus region and nature and mountains and basically hiking. Next is number 9, Andorra. This is a very, very unique country. It is definitely not for everyone just because it is so small and quiet. Andorra has a population of just 77,000 people, which is just about the size of Paphos here in Cyprus, which is in itself a small country already. But the benefits lie on the table because there is a flat 10% corporate tax and also a 10% income tax for income over 40,000 euros per year. And if you combine these two tax rates, then you have a total tax rate in Andorra of 20% as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, freelancer, digital nomad, whatever it is that you're doing. And if you're also an investor and you hold your assets, your investments for over 10 years, then there's also 0% capital gains tax on your profits. In addition to that, there is no wealth tax in Andorra and also no inheritance tax, which makes it a great place to accumulate wealth, to build a family office and then inherit everything to your children. Also definitely worth mentioning is the fact that Andorra also has the lowest VAT rate in Europe with just 4.5%, and the activities there are rather limited but definitely of high quality, such as skiing, hiking definitely in summer. And I wouldn't say Andorra has a hot climate like Spain, for example, but it is definitely cloudless most of the time during the year. And in order to be a tax resident in Andorra, you just have to spend 90 days per year in the country, but you need to make some kind of investment into the country, and that is either buying a property there or putting a 50,000 euros deposit to the government, which you can actually claim back the moment you want to leave Andorra again. And if your end goal is to eventually get a new citizenship in the country that you start a new life, so to say, then Andorra might not be the place because it is rather hard to get citizenship there. To me personally, Andorra wouldn't really fit from a lifestyle point of view. From the tax point of view, I'm paying less taxes here where I'm living right now. But I wanted to add Andorra just because there are a lot of people that are actually very interested in Andorra. It is quite popular among Germans, I would say. It is a very peaceful place to be in, and it is quite nice for retirees, for peaceful, spiritual, religious people that want to be far away from big cities. Talking about big cities, number 8 is Singapore, which is like Asia's version of Switzerland. It is like the new place for banking next to Switzerland. There is a corporate tax of 17%, but there is no dividend tax upon dividend distribution. Also, in relation to the corporate tax, newly established company entities actually have a very low effective corporate tax that goes down to 4.25% on the first 75,000 US dollars. And then above that, it is blending towards the full 17% corporate tax. This is definitely very individual and needs an individual consultation call, but be aware that if you are new in Singapore and you incorporate a new company, you don't need to pay the 17% corporate tax right from the beginning. Also, there is no capital gains tax at all and no inheritance tax in Singapore, which is definitely nice as well. And by the way, just ignore the duplicates that I mistakenly put here. But something that is also worth mentioning is when you're relocating to a new country, you need to look at it from a macro perspective. Don't just look at the headline corporate tax. Also look at other factors, infrastructural points, and also from a business point of view, where you're actually operating. But if you're, for example, operating in the Asian market, or you're thinking of expanding into the Southeast Asian market, then Singapore is a great gateway. And it is great if you're building in the Asian market, if you're into e-commerce or whatever it is. So this is where it is very important to look at your individual situation and decide what makes more sense for you in your case. And this is actually exactly what we do at Tax.One, so definitely make sure to reach out to us. Also, Singapore is very clean, respectful, and it has a very great infrastructure. Now, from here, we are going to number 7, which is Bulgaria. Bulgaria, I would say, has a very simple low tax EU structure with 10% corporate tax and 10% personal income tax and 5% dividend tax. That means as an entrepreneur running your own limited company, you have an all-in effective rate of approximately 15% because you are most likely paying yourself a very small salary and you are taking yourself a rather high dividend because, as you see, the dividend tax is half the personal income tax. When it comes to living in Bulgaria, then Sofia is definitely a very dynamic city, 1.3 million people that live there. The city has a growing startup scene, a lot of young entrepreneurs. If you go into cafes, you see quite some people working on their MacBook, on their businesses, on their side businesses, whatever it is. And it is rather cheap to live there, especially if you compare it to Central Europe. But it is also geographically very close to Central Europe, which makes it great because you can fly to your home country every now and then without traveling across the world like to Singapore, for example. Also, you can get EU citizenship after 5 years of living in Bulgaria, which is especially interesting for non-EU citizens. Now it's getting interesting because the next ones are definitely my personal favorites as well. And on number 6, we have Malta, which I actually visited last year for private and business reasons, of course. And I would say that Malta definitely has the most complex tax system in the EU, but not the worst, because headline corporate tax in Malta is actually 35%, which every company has to pay upfront. But then there is a refund mechanism which drops the effective rate to approximately 5% after dividend distribution. That happens most cases with the so-called 6/7 refund, where you are getting 6/7 of the tax that you paid refunded. So the tax authorities in Malta are literally going to wire you money back. But the catch is that those refunds only work with offshore holding structures, because the dividend receiving entity or person needs to be non-domiciled. So it cannot be a Maltese citizen or another Maltese company. And that leads to the fact that in order to enjoy the actual 5% low corporate tax of Malta, you need to set up another company. And a lot of our clients do that with a Cyprus holding company. But then running two companies, it gets rather expensive to set it up and also to maintain, because you need to incorporate two companies. You need to do accounting for two companies, and you even need to audit both companies. And Maltese companies are not cheap to set up and also not cheap to do the accounting for and to do the audit. And I don't know what it is. I never really liked this tax system, this complex structure, this complex setup, because to me it looks like a loophole to avoid OECD compliance and the global minimum corporate tax, which is 15%. So to me the question is just how long will this work? And the Maltese government is also aware of this, and this is why last year in 2025 they actually implemented another option where you can pay 15% flat, so you do not have to pay 35% upfront, but just 15%, but then also you're not getting any refund, which then is exactly the global minimum corporate tax of 15%. But some other notes worth mentioning are, for example, that Malta also offers a very great non-dom status, which is based on a remittance. So the money that you bring to Malta needs to be taxed, but the money that you keep outside of Malta doesn't need to be taxed, which means that a lot of Maltese tax residents have offshore companies, offshore bank accounts, and they try to keep as much money as possible outside of Malta. But regardless of that, there is a minimum tax for every non-dom in Malta, and that is 5,000 euros, which every non-dom has to pay if you're earning more than 35,000 euros in dividends. But other than that, there is no inheritance tax, no wealth tax, and no gift tax, which is also quite nice. And in relation to the lifestyle, I found that the lifestyle is very unique. It is a very small country. It feels like a city. I was driving around Malta, Valletta, and whatever the cities are called there, and I was on my bike and I was really enjoying my time there. It definitely has an island vibe there, quite some international audience, and also the nightlife is definitely amazing. A little bit jealous here in Cyprus, there is not such a thriving nightlife, but then at the same time, I know that I would get distracted if there's party every night, and I would definitely go out way too much. So this is why I like the peace here in Cyprus, where I'm not getting distracted. Next is Thailand. Also definitely interesting because of the fact that I was there for 3 months just last year as well. And let's start with the taxes. So the tax heavily depends on your residency status in Thailand. If you are a tax resident, so you spend more than 183 days in Thailand, your income gets taxed, and the Thai tax authorities are very strict on that if you bring the money to Thailand. And with bringing the money to Thailand, it is basically remitting the money in Thailand, so same as or very similar to Malta. And the progressive personal income tax, so depending on how much money you make, you need to pay something from 0 to 35% on your personal income. And that is why most clients that we have that live in Thailand, we have quite a few, combine a foreign company with their Thai residency. They issue their business invoices to their clients or whatever it is from another jurisdiction, and they keep the money in a bank account outside of Thailand. And this is how they can stay in Thailand and pay relatively low taxes, close to no tax at all. Again, depends very much on your individual situation. And they also have a long-term residency visa where their foreign income can be fully exempt, but Thai income is flat 17%. And a lot of people love it there. But to me personally, my character, it was very chaotic. I didn't like the beaches and I got food poison. So maybe I'm a little bit biased here, but I have to admit the problem was that I had extremely high expectations. I saw so many social media posts, YouTube videos, Instagram pictures, and so many friends told me how amazing their experience was. So I thought I'm going there and it's absolutely paradise. And don't get me wrong, it was. I like it. Maybe I will go again. But it didn't have the wow effect that I was expecting. But it was definitely very cheap, cost of living extremely low, amazing, and in relation to tax, it is doable if you really want it. So in any case, definitely make sure what fits to you and to your personal situation. And now we continue with number 4, which is Monaco. Their tax structure is amazing. I mean, 0% personal income tax, no capital gains tax, no wealth tax. And in relation to corporate tax, it works very much different to most or all countries, because most exempt foreign income. They say if you make money outside of our country, this foreign income doesn't have to be taxed, but Monaco literally does the opposite. So they tax money that you make abroad, and they don't tax money if you're making it inside of Monaco, which obviously shows that they want to boost their local economy. Anyway, so we have 25% corporate tax, but only if 25% or more of the revenue is coming from abroad. Meaning if 75% or more of the money that you make with your Monaco company is coming from within Monaco, so Monaco clients basically, then you are completely tax exempt on a corporate level as well. Also here worth mentioning is that there is a 2-year exemption or some kind of relief for new companies, but here comes the catch, and that is that most tax residents of Monaco, just because it is such an expensive elite country, most of the high net worth individuals living there use NGOs, trusts, foundations, charities, etc. These kinds of things, and they don't really operate a business anymore, or a lot of them. They literally are like the elite, because Monaco is literally a legal tax haven for the ultra rich. You have the Formula One there, Cannes, Nice, very close by, elite networking. Apartments in Monaco start at millions and millions in euros. So while it is not really feasible or realistic or even accessible for the average entrepreneur, it is the place to be for the top 0.1%. There is also a real presence expected, so 3 or more months per year you need to spend in Monaco in order to be seen as a legal tax resident. But again, very expensive lifestyle. We have literally one client that relocated to Monaco from the UK, and hundreds and hundreds of more entrepreneurs that relocated to Cyprus, for example, or the UAE. Number 3, you already see it, is Switzerland. Also here, I actually lived in Switzerland for quite some months. 2020, right after I left Bali, where I also lived for 6 months. And the interesting part with Switzerland is that it is not part of the EU, but it also offers a lump sum tax, which is the reason why a lot of wealthy entrepreneurs actually live there. And the lump sum tax in Switzerland is based on your living expenses, not your income. So the taxable rate is 5 to 6 times your annual rent. Let's say you're paying 100,000 Swiss francs per year in rent, then your proposed tax rate is 700,000 Swiss francs in annual lump sum tax. But this does mean that you can rent a studio apartment and Airbnb something bigger, because there is a minimum tax of around 430,000 to 1 million Swiss francs, which is depending on the canton. Canton is like Bundesland, we call it in Germany, like a part of Switzerland, like a city with their own little rules, which are not national rules, tax laws and policies, but like very specific. And there are quite some popular cantons such as Zug, because of the low corporate tax there. Also Schwyz is very popular, and Vaud. And now back to the lump sum tax. Key conditions are that you're not allowed to work in Switzerland if you're going to use the lump sum tax, and it is also not available to Swiss citizens. Additional info, also a very, very big reason why so many people from around the world want to live in Switzerland is that private capital gains on shares are generally tax-free. But the thing that a lot of people are not aware of is that every canton, so Switzerland, is actually imposing a small wealth tax. And this again depends on each canton. And we are happy to advise you in an individual consultation call. The information that I'm giving here in this video is very, very generic, just because it is impossible to give a tax consultation over a YouTube video. I'm just making you aware of the top 10 countries with the lowest tax and highest quality of life. And then from there, it is up to you what you do. We are happy to advise you in an individual consultation call. Just fill out the form at tax.one, and we are getting back to you very soon. In relation to the lifestyle and my experiences in Switzerland, I absolutely loved my time there in 2021. I loved the lifestyle. I loved just sitting somewhere, drinking a coffee, looking at the Mont Blanc. I was in Lutry, and then I was also quite some months in Lausanne, and it was like the French part. I loved the nature. I loved the lake. I was jumping into the lake. I was golfing in Italy. Absolutely amazing. And obviously also the banking in Switzerland, extremely safe, AAA rating, one of the best, if not the best banking options, private banking, all that. And Switzerland always remained neutral during hard times. And now next one, number 2, is UAE, where I also just spent a few months, where I'm also operating from a business point of view, and where I actually spent quite some time. And let's talk about the taxes, because this is very interesting. So As a tax resident living in the UAE via 183 days or 90 days with enough substance, you're eligible for 0% personal income tax, which also includes dividends, interest, income, and capital gains. But there is a corporate tax that the UAE and all free zones impose, which is 9%. With a free zone company, you still have the option for 0%, but only until the end of the year, up to 3 million dirhams, which is at the time of recording this video, just about 700,000 euros. This is something that I'm taken advantage of with my business partners, and then after 2027 most likely only the first 375,000 dirhams, which is currently 86,000 euros, will remain tax-free, and then everything after that will be taxed with 9%. The fact that they implemented the 9% corporate tax, because it used to be 0%, in my eyes is actually great, because it leads to UAE not being grey listed and still making it internationally operational to interact with other countries and to open up bank accounts as a UAE resident. But I have to admit that the UAE, especially in the beginning, can be quite confusing just because of the fact that there are so many free zones. Takes quite some time to understand which is the best for you. Setup is complicated. It consists of the medical check, biometrics. You need to visit multiple offices. You need to give your fingerprints. You need to give your iris, eye. You need to literally do so many things, due diligence, KYC, AML. It's very, very intense and also expensive to set it up. And as soon as you make a mistake, you're paying high penalties. And from my experience, unfortunately, some free zones are not very helpful and they just expect you to know everything, and they are not very proactive, which can be very frustrating. And when it comes to the visa and residency, the UAE offers a golden visa, so 5 or 10 years for investors. If you're buying a property, for example, the standard visa, which I also have, is either investor or partner. I currently have the partner Emirates ID, but there's also employment, for example, if you're working for a company in the UAE. And in order to establish tax residency, you need to spend at least 90 days there, plus rent a property long term and just have enough substance there to prove that the UAE is your economic life center. And when it comes to citizenship and banking, it is virtually impossible to get a citizenship in the UAE. And when it comes to banking, also myself, I have horrible experience over there. Very, very slow. Due diligence, absolutely insane. I stopped using one bank because while onboarding, the amount of questions, the kind of questions, and the documents that they requested were absolutely ridiculous. And so I just decided to not go forward after wasting 2 months trying to get a bank account over there. Way too document heavy for new companies. And I'm not the only one experiencing that. So we literally just have the VO Bank because it's the only option. Now, when it comes to the lifestyle, absolutely amazing. I spent New Year's Eve over there on a yacht. Then I went out. I met amazing people from all over the world, famous people, big businesses, upcoming entrepreneurs, smart people, geniuses, creative people, artists, anything you can imagine. You will find it in Dubai. I always say that there are no limits in Dubai. It is like a futuristic city with a modern lifestyle, and it has one of the biggest airports in the world. But obviously it is very expensive. I spend at least 10,000 euros a month in Dubai. And also it is ruled by monarchs, which means that rules, policies, laws, tax rates, everything can change overnight. Definitely worth mentioning. And yeah, international hub for business. Obviously, all the big events, all the big expos, all that happens in Dubai. Maybe currently not because of the Middle East conflict, but as soon as everything is more relaxed, Dubai will definitely recover. I'm positive on that. And now we have number one. Who would have thought? Cyprus. This is obviously my personal opinion, and I'm going to explain to you why. First, the corporate tax and the general business incentives. We have a low corporate tax of 15%, which again is the lowest OECD compliant rate you can have. But we have the IP box regime, which means that up to 80% of the corporate tax will be reduced, which means you can have an effective corporate tax of 3% on your IP income. My friend George is a software entrepreneur. He's the founder of Shrine.io, which is the biggest Shopify theme. If you're into e-commerce, maybe you know Shrine. This is my friend George. He pays 3% corporate tax, which makes Cyprus's corporate tax even lower than UAE's corporate tax for software and IP related income. Then Cyprus also has no capital gains tax, and Cyprus enjoys over 65 double tax treaties, which is great for international businesses, holding structures, all that. And What I love about Cyprus very much, especially when I came here, is the fact that it is super cheap to incorporate a company here, set yourself up here in Cyprus and maintain your structure, your company, and basically just run your business at extremely low fixed costs. When it comes to personal tax and your residency in Cyprus, then Cyprus offers the non-dom status, which means for 17 years you pay 0% taxes on your dividend and interest income. And in order to become a tax resident of Cyprus, you can go via the 183 days. So if you spend more than 6 months in any country in the world, you become legally their tax resident, and you need to file your personal tax return in that country, and you basically need to pay the tax rates of that jurisdiction. But Cyprus also offers a 60 days tax residency, which actually no other low tax jurisdiction does. And this is also the reason why so many people come to Cyprus. They spend 2 months here and then they spend the rest of their time in Thailand, Singapore, Bali, wherever they want, Dubai. And like so many people literally just come here for 2 months, get their tax residency certificate, then they are a tax resident here, and then they just travel abroad. And this is something no other country actually does, because you can get your tax residency certificate literally on day 61, which you can then show to your home country, for example, showing them that you are not eligible for their taxes anymore. But this is getting too complex. Just reach out to us on Tax.one and we will explain everything in an individual consultation call. Let's go back to general information. So Cyprus has no inheritance tax, no wealth tax, and also very interesting for talent that wants to move to Cyprus, for talented developers, talented salespeople and things like that, there is a 50% income tax deduction for new residents for the first 10 years. So if you come to Cyprus and you do not have your own company, but you're working for a company, then your personal income tax actually gets halved, which means even at the highest income tax rate, which is 35%, this gets halved to 17.5%. So in any case, if you move to Cyprus, your total tax rate is just about 17%, because with a company, it is 15% corporate tax and 2.65% YESI contribution. And if you work for a company, it is 17.5% at the highest income. But what you can also do as an entrepreneur is to combine your Cyprus non-dom status with an offshore company. And I actually have a separate video where I talk about my UAE setup with a Cyprus non-dom. You can watch that video. And also worth mentioning is the fact that Cyprus offers EU passport after 5 years of living here. And when it comes to the lifestyle of Cyprus, then I have to say it is definitely peaceful here. We have a slow quality of life. Cyprus offers more than 320 sunny days. We have amazing Mediterranean food, a lot of meat. The country is English speaking. Everywhere you go, you can speak English to the people. We have the cleanest seawater in the European Union. We have great airport connections across Europe and the Middle East. And because I'm living in Cyprus for 7 years now, there are a lot of videos of me talking about Cyprus out there, literally hundreds. Just type Cyprus into the YouTube search bar and you will see my face many times if you type in Cyprus tax, Cyprus real estate, whatever it is. But anyways, it was definitely a long video. Thank you very much for watching until the end. If you want to book an individual consultation call, make sure to reach out to us on Tax.one, and then we will speak very soon.